Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thanks for coming back. And with me right now is Thomas Fricke, who will introduce himself very quickly in his talk himself. I just want to say, great hat. We talked very briefly before this, and I said, it's the thought that counts. It's a hat. So, I mean, you put about the same amount of work into it as Jamie, for example. So, great job there. And Thomas will take us through a journey to Wonderland, or maybe it's a horror trip to Kubernetes security, which I think anyone who ever worked with Kubernetes kind of like feels very familiar right now. So, Thomas, are you ready?
I'm ready, thank you, and cool. Let's start. Okay, so that's me. Just a short introduction. I'm in Kubernetes since September 2015, did a lot of DevOps related things. I run the Kubernetes security meetup in Berlin, write articles in a German computer magazine. I'm also a member of several boards, Octarine, AG Kritis, Gaia X. If you're in Germany, the last both could be interesting for you. Anything else, I will explain in the talk. So where are we now? So this is my short timeline of Kubernetes. So it has a little bit evolved from a Star Trek-like fantasy into, yes, we run an energy controls now. And what you see here is it was intended for running more or less games on scale. It was never intended to be in the core of the critical infrastructure, but it turned out that it has so interesting that even in, what was the date, in 2015, we introduced telephony, encrypted telephony, according to German law, into Kubernetes in an Amazon cluster. And then it evolved further. We had Helm, Rocket, the other container runtime here. We gave our first security trainings in 2016. And then long before the secrets have been encrypted, we used a role-based access control, had projects with several providers. So it's a lot of things. And nowadays, in 2018, energy trading came into Kubernetes, and now I'm in the middle of the energy control project. So this is where Kubernetes all is used. So you see the military things, which I personally don't like so much, but it's already there in F16. We have done it on chips. It will be part of the multimedia management systems in German train. It's running medical applications in the background. It's running in the energy sector, and it's running in 5G everywhere. So 5G network effectively is an edge node cluster based on Kubernetes. So this is why we care about security. And this is my more or less personal view on it. We will run power grids on it, and power grid means low voltage is 50 kilovolt. So you see, it's a really critical infrastructure. It's highly regulated. It's quite international at the moment. It's on the European scale, and unfortunately for Pikachu, no Pokemons are involved anymore. But this is a serious application we will have in the future. And yeah, what I don't want to tell you is, oh, it's all nice how we have success stories of Kubernetes and how we brought our retail store online within whatever, a few days. No, the reality is a little bit more complicated. Even I have to tell you, I like Kubernetes very much, but under the hood, we see an ecosystem in evolution, and it's still maturing. So this is your last chance. After this, you will have less illusions on Kubernetes, and I hope the reality is not so scaring that you believe it. And yeah, we will take the red pill. Otherwise, you have to look for different video. And by the way, I don't use this meme without citing Lily Warowski, which slams all the people who are abusing movie culture for their evil intentions. So yeah, Kubernetes. Normally, if I give a training, I start with the right side here. So how we do deploy an Nginx deployment, and after several years, it's clear this is even in the very beginning establishing a very bad practice. So this is directly from the Kubernetes documentation, and running an Nginx on container port 80 requires root. We have effectively the Kubernetes container for this Nginx version is not immutable. You have a lot of bad practices in this very first example. If you look on the right side, on the right side, you find the example from the Nginx corporation itself. They are running an unprivileged Nginx on container port 8080. So this is a little difference, and it's a big difference in security. So don't use this tradition here. So, and if we look deeper into the rabbit hole, we see a lot of issues on all levels, from CPU, where the mitigation is not really done well. Performance is impacted if you are using the official Linux kernel things. The Linux kernel itself has some questionable execve with new privileges which are used in Kubernetes. Kubernetes itself has an absolutely messy security stack, which is nobody understands. PodSecurityPolicies and role-based access control. And what we see in the wild, the basic setup in the clouds is not secure. Docker is a story on its own. The Docker images in the Dockerhub are not really qualified as secure, so we have to rebuild them on our own. We cannot use much of the Docker images in secure environments. We also have Docker running with unnecessary things like the Docker socket, the privileged things like this. Another story is Helm, and then though the v3 is partially ignored, so v3 Tiller with the Tiller server component is running with cluster admin rights, and I know at least 4 independent exploits against this Tiller. So you can take over an entire cluster from inside an Helm chart, and which is exactly not what you want. Istio itself is really a great thing, so service mesh are great, but the actually rolled out implementations are also without PodSecurityPolicies, or at least an open policy agent. Istio can use a container network interface, and this is completely ignored by the cloud provider. So they are rolling out insecure things on scale, which is not the intention of a cloud provider. Cloud providers are not really doing a good job. And then this means you are responsible. If you are using Kubernetes, you go to the internet and don't name the providers. I just checked that the actual situation is as worse as I'm citing here. So kubectl create with a service account Tiller, and this is definitely something you should avoid. Another company, same thing, using Helm version 2. And the good thing here is a good example. If you run an attack against Istio, then at least there is a solution, but the solution is unfortunately not rolled out. This is my conversation with Tao Li. He was security engineer for Istio at Google in Florida. So they have solved a lot of issues, but they are not rolled out in the clouds at the moment. Another thing is, how do you run applications in Kubernetes? So there are absolutely unsecure recipes, and this is not what you should do. So one other example is Helm with PodSecurityPolicies always fails. You cannot use Helm in Helm stable charts in a PodSecurity aware environment. So Helm install stable Tomcat fails if you have enabled PodSecurityPolicies. So the entire Helm stable branch needs to be cleaned up. Yeah, Helm versus Tiller, and this is in the Cloud Shell, so they are running version 2.14.1, and here you see the sketch of what's going on. The Tiller account is used, and you can, inside a Helm chart, you can hide an attack who is auditing Helm charts, where you have a service account named Tiller, and then you get access to the Kubernetes cluster. Effectively, from inside a Helm chart, you can run an attack taking over the entire cluster, which is not what you want. So please don't do this. So this is a warning. And we have more examples on this, but this is what we can talk about this. Another thing is most of the attacks actually are script kiddie attacks. If you don't have PodSecurityPolicies and run standard containers as root, which have access to the host file system, it's this minimal pod definition which can be used to take over the cluster from inside. So you have a Docker socket copied into the container, and then you can run any command on that. In GKE, this runs out after you have expired your range of IP addresses. So this is nothing which can be done serious. And this works for every service account which has access to the host file system. So no PSP is a major flaw in secure environments. Yeah, so sorry for the low quality of the stream, but I will share all the slides with you. So this is an attack against the Docker socket. If you have no PSP, every user who has access to the host file system can take over your cluster. And here we are with Istio. The Istio CNI plugin fixes a lot of these things, but nobody actually is using it. So it's there since 1.2. At the moment, we have 1.5 or 1.6, and it's not rolled out by the major cloud providers, which is a shame. And this is a script kiddie attack against Istio. So you can switch off the entire Istio security if you can take over, if you can start a pod with a security context where you can change the capabilities. So this effectively you are getting network admin inside a pod, and then Istio security is voided. And this works because we are not able to forbid it by default, and this must be enforced by you as a user, which is actually not what your first step is. It's also not your task on the second day. It's your task on the whatever 5th or 7th day, and then it might be a little bit too late. So conclusion, all cloud providers offer solutions which are questionable from a term of security. So all clouds are broken somehow, and this has to be fixed as soon as possible. And how do we fix it? So this is a positive message. We should use least privileges. So we should chop off the privileges as much as possible, because we know there are killer rabbits, not only the nice white rabbit out there. We should simply reduce the number of privileges we need. And here's an example. If you look for the container lifecycle in the POP, you see an init phase, a running phase, a ready phase, and terminating is not interesting anymore. And the example is borrowed from Elasticsearch. So this is what actually happens. You have changes to the host system from an init container, which is one of the wrongest things you can imagine. And then you are running a main application as root, so as it was in the beginning. And then in principle, if you can install sysctl, or it's installed in all major images, then you can change from running system the host settings, and this is not what you want. So you have a path from the internet to your host system if you do it wrong, because all the role-based access control things in PSPs are so confusing. What you should do actively is you should separate the concerns. So you isolate the system settings, do the system CTL somewhere else without any connection to the internet, because it's undefined anyway. And in the end, you should run your application not in user, not in root namespace, but in user space. So no root, no sudo, no privileged port. And you can use an additional network policy to isolate the main. And this should be enforced somehow. And all this in parallel, you have a chance to run a very powerful application cleanly and simply restrict the rights you need to the namespace, which is not exposed. And I have worked with Octarine, and this will be in one of the next tools for their KubeScan and guardrails products that you really can check not only if a container is running with a wrong settings, but also if you have a clean setup of your namespaces. So pod security policy with Helm, it is failing completely. So this is something the Cheshire Cat could not have done worse. So this is not something we can recommend. The entire concept actually is confusing because we are breaking more or less all Helm charts by pod security policy, and the security concept introduced by pod security policies is not well ordered. So there is there's not a comparison like you have larger or smaller symbols. So a pod security policy can be better for network, another one can be better for host access, another one can be better for root processes. And therefore, it's not always easy to pick the best pod security policy for a container. What we see here also is another mess because Kubernetes tries all pod security policies in alphabetical order. This is, if you don't have an order, you use the alphabet. So if you have these 5 rules, permissive, restricted, strict, very strict, and unbelievable strict, it always picks permissive because it's the first in the alphabet. This is probably not what we want. So this is full of it. Kubernetes is full of such things. You always can check it with Go templates or JSON paths. That's a good idea, actually, but you have hundreds of these rules to check. And what I would like to see is either in our own applications or if you do it, you should simplify it. And nobody says what Bruce Schneier means if, simplicity or complexity is the enemy of security. So nobody defines complexity. So if we take into account, we have relations here, we have N-to-M or 1-to-N or 1-to-1, or even no relations. So the N-to-M relations are more complex than the others. So we should try to reduce the number of relations by an order. So we should only have an application in one namespace with one service account, with one role-based access control restricted to that very service account. Only one role and only one role binding. So the mess is done by setting up an environment where you have lots of role bindings to a role, which is completely unnecessary complexity. And we should have as a good practice to bind every application to one service account. Most of the superpowers we have here are not really needed. Another thing is what you see is if you go into the Kubernetes stack from the kernel to libc, systemd, the operating system's kubelet, and then the runtime. Most of it is not really necessary. We had CoreOS in the beginning where they tried to clean up all the things, but now the vendors are creeping back into Kubernetes and they want to leave a mark and make a business with it, which is completely okay. But effectively, if you look deeper into it and if you talk to people who are very security aware, you don't need a libc, you don't need a systemd, you don't need an operating system in Kubernetes. Actually, And I've talked to people who are simply saying, okay, we need to start a kubelet and a kernel. And there's even an initiative to re-implement the kubelet functionality in Rust. And then the next step also would be natural to use the container runtime and re-implement it in Rust. So then you only have secure environment and containers, and anything else is quite an unnecessary complexity. So the other white rabbit, which you might have it, is from Jefferson Airplane. It's a rock band from the 70s. So one pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, and the ones that vendors gives you don't do anything at all. So this is how I would translate it. So you should be aware that really in a real secure environment, most of the things are not needed. Core has tried to start it before they have been bought by Red Hat, but now it's going back into the opposite direction. So the conclusion, yeah, finally. Actually, we are all made here, that's true, but what I can tell you is Kubernetes is a great stage for real secure containers. So we have everything. We have been looking in other environments for a long time. Secrets, network policies, all the service mesh are great for security. But multi-tenancy is still hard, so and it should be aimed that we need desperately less security. So PodSecurity must work together with Helm. Namespaces, accounts, role bindings have to be simplified. The software stack on the node was another example. And we have features we have not seen everywhere else, so audit logs, and Kubernetes is GitOps and SecDevOps ready. Altogether, I really like it because it also feels like Linux in version 95. Then I was whatever in the mid-20s, and so I feel much younger than. But don't underestimate the effort. So yeah, this is more or less what I wanted to tell you, and I think yeah, I'm open to questions. You can contact me. I will be in the Discord, and yeah, feel free to ask me anything.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Very sorry, people, about the problems with the screen share. Also, just realized that we have two separate chats. There's one chat for the track itself, and there's also each talk also has their individual chats. So I didn't see your messages up until about 5 minutes ago. So very, very sorry about that. If you have more questions, please drop them into the chat right now, and I can relay them to Thomas at the moment. But up until now, the only comment that I've seen is that Helm 3 doesn't have Tiller anymore, which I think...
Yes. That's actually a good thing, but the cloud providers are very slow rolling out Helm version 3. So Google did not do it, IBM did not do it. The only one I'm aware of is Microsoft. So Microsoft did a very good job rolling out Helm 3 at the moment in Azure, and all the others have to keep up. And I flagged a complaint against one of these vendors, and the answer was more or less in the middle of incompetence and arrogant, and they don't see the problem. And we have 4 attacks against this. So you can, from a WordPress delivered by Helm 2, you can take over the entire cluster, even with network policies enabled. So this was Ram from Octarine told me how to do this. And this is something you cannot allow. So yeah, I'm aware Helm version 3 is much better. Please use it if possible, and all the others, writing documentation, remove Helm Tiller installation recommendations from your documentation, please, as soon as possible.
Yeah, good tip. Thank you so much, Thomas. Do you have anything else that you would like to share? Like a best practice or a frequently asked question or anything like that?
Yeah, don't underestimate the efforts. So you have to be go careful into the entire business of Kubernetes security. It's not trivial. You have to understand a lot of things from Kubernetes to Linux to all the other tools. And probably if you have a real security aware or an application which really needs security, you need some help in the beginning. So ask somebody who can help you and give you some hints in the beginning.
Right. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thanks for the talk. And you'll be making the slides available on Twitter? Or where would you be sharing them?
Shared, yeah, I will share it wherever you want it. Twitter is probably a good idea.
Twitter probably, or you could come into the umbrella. So as we noticed right now, you can go to the stream, or you can just click, and if you go in the schedule, click your talk individually, then there's also a chat for your talk, and you could share them there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, Twitter to be safe, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Thomas. And we'll be back in 15 minutes with Alban Fricke by Kinvolk. And he's going to share his adventures in BPF land with us. So don't miss this. And see you in 15 minutes. Bye.
Yep. Bye.